All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're having a wonderful evening. I got a nice little recap of what happened today, but then I want to talk about the black swan of crisis. And what I am referring to is how the conflict in the Middle East can turn into a negative effect on the stock market. There was a big event that happened over in Gaza today. It was honestly heartbreaking. There was a hospital attack, but as we were going through it, a lot of people were asking me questions about it. If you haven't been on stream, we have been covering a lot of this stuff, and even the reporting as the headlines come in, because a lot of it was conflicting. You got to see it in real time, but it really brought back echoes of the 70s, and people are asking, the stock market is up. Is this going to have an effect on the world? You know, even today, the retail sales, everything is fine. People are asking, at what point does this conflict really start to affect us? And that is why I'm making this video. There's a lot going on. I'm not here to tell you to pick sides and do this or do that, but you do need to understand how things happening in one part of the world inevitably have an effect on the rest of us as part of the world economy that we're in. So I think there's a lot to learn from it, and it will give you some stuff to look out for. So we're going to go over that. I got the recap, a couple of plays, but I think we're going to have a good video. So drop that thumbs up on the video. Make sure you're subscribed. And if you don't know, we are live Monday through Friday, 30 minutes before open, youtube.com/the stock market. We will see you there in the morning. But let's start off with a real quick recap of the day. It was wild because we had a wild gap down, went up, hit a new high of the last week or so, even got back to filling that gap down that we had from early September, late September, right around here. And then you just sold off and ended up doing nothing. The paradox of all of it is that the bonds gapped down in the morning, and this was after all of the earnings there. That's what I think is the reason. And then the retail sales came in extremely hot, and then that brought us down even more and then contributed more towards why we gapped down. Pretty much good news was bad news. And like I'm saying, the first little gap down on bonds, another day, market didn't move much, but the bonds got absolutely killed. You've probably heard people talking about the 2-year reaching past the 2006 point today. That is all important there, but in general, we have seen a detachment over the last 2 days where pretty much, markets have held up and bonds have continued to get destroyed. So like I'm saying, we had earnings in the morning, and I think a lot of them did good. If I even bring up the list here, and you'll even see coming into tomorrow, but Bank of America, they didn't scare anybody as far as banks go. Same thing with Goldman Sachs. I was telling you, they could have been the weaker point. They weren't. People were actually kind of impressed with them. Lockheed Martin was a little bad, and I think Albertsons and Ericsson, these two were bad, but everybody else, even Bank of Mellon, all things were good. After hours, UAL, they beat but still missed, because remember, they lowered into their guidance, and then the analysts all lowered, but they beat the lowered analysts, but it was still in par with a lowered guidance from last quarter. It gets kind of confusing, but they have their guidance call in the morning, so we're going to hear a little bit more. And then JB Hunt, they were in line, but they still sold off. Now tomorrow, we will be getting all of these companies, Procter & Gamble, ASML, chip makers, and that was a big deal in the morning. This is probably the final part of the recap with all of the movements. You did get another update on the chip ban, and even though NVIDIA and even companies like ASML, they said they're not going to get affected by it or it wasn't material, they got pretty clobbered today. NVIDIA still ended up closing down 5. At one point, it was down 8.5, but in general, today's reaction, it was really about the data and earnings. One pocket was mostly good earnings. We had bad data. The bonds kept going down. We were able to shrug it off, and then by the end of the day, you're just holding this. Look at the 5-day chart on the SPY. We are waiting for more of these reports, and you have this lingering conflict. So tomorrow, it's really just going to be a couple of data points. I think UK or Eurozone CPI. Then there's 5 Fed speakers like Waller, Harker, Bowman. It's all in order. There's a bunch of them, and then there's some data after hours, again, related to Japan, and then intraday, you will get housing data. We got some surprises with retail sales, so always keep your eye out for it. But for the most part, I think those earnings are going to drive us throughout the morning, and then getting ready for Netflix and Tesla. So now let us talk about the black swan of oil. What do I think is going to happen? Why is there a black swan of crisis? And really the whole point I'm trying to say here is that depending on how this conflict plays out, it could lead to a black swan at very unexpected, low probability, destabilizing event that would have a negative effect, I think, on the world economy. And what I'm talking about is the price of oil going extremely high. So let me give you a little background in why I'm saying this, what you're looking at, or what we're going to get into. I got a nice little background. I'm going to make it quick, but this is the Arabian Gulf or the Persian Gulf, depending on what you want to call it. Literally, the same exact conflicts and rivalries over the years have even led people to either calling it the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf based on like the name and the implications and all of that. But it's Saudi Arabia, there's Kuwait, Oman, the UAE, and then of course Iran. So the issue here is that 20 to 30% of the world's crude oil daily supply travels through here, the Strait of Hormuz. This is considered an oil choke point. So if there is a problem with these two countries, even Iran or anything else, it can lead to big impacts on oil. So the main black swan that I am talking about here, you may have already heard it, is if Iran gets into the conflict. But what I am saying more specifically, if the entire Arabian or Persian Gulf, if they get into the conflict, because that would lead to a ridiculous price of oil. And I'm saying that because now oil's still expensive and you have another conflict with an OPEC member, Russia, and that has already led to a bunch of crazy things as already. So that's only one part of it, because the even worst case scenario, it's not just these places and all these countries getting involved. It would be if these countries decided to put an oil embargo on the states or any country that supports Israel. Now, why would I say that? Where does this idea come from? Because this is what happened in 1973, the first 1973 oil crisis. The Persian Gulf, the Arabian Gulf, the Arab producing countries, whatever you want to call them at the time, they decided to sanction the United States and any supporter of Israel due to the conflict that was going on during the time. So that's why I brought up the hospital attack today, and we saw a lot of it, man. There was a bunch of conflicting reports. We were watching it. We had the first report that the hospital was attacked. They condemned Israel for it immediately, and then shortly thereafter, Israel said, we didn't do it, and they blamed Hamas for a failed missile launch. Now, the point isn't who did it, honestly. The point is 500 souls were lost immediately, but in the economic sense here, what happened afterwards, it's not something you've seen as much, and everybody has been on the fence lately, but you had countries come out immediately: Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, and then even Saudi Arabia right here. They condemned Israel for the attack, and they said it's heinous. Some even called it a war crime, and even the leader of Hamas said that the United States is responsible, even in their support of Israel. So why I'm saying this is a very interesting development. Obviously, there's way larger concerns at hand, but in the context of history, this conflict and even how it's played out and related to these countries and the flow and movement of oil, this is starting to sound a lot like the 70s, and how the situation in the 70s eventually boiled into sanctions if you support this, just like we have seen the world already do in regards to Russia and Ukraine. Remember, we went around and we said, do you support Russia? Do you support this or not? Then sanction them. You saw a lot of people work together on that. If you watch the same thing happen in the Middle East now, of people picking sides and who to support, or just, again, going after Israel, it is a lot of what happened in the 70s. And that's why I say, even in this conflict, you guys all have your own opinion. There is a lot of history behind it, and this is what I brought up today, because even in the 70s, how we even guided or gave our support as the United States, a lot depended upon the optics of, was Israel the aggressor or not? And we even warned Israel, and at the same time, when the Arab nations did condemn Israel, back then it led to an onslaught of going after all of the supporters economically through the use of sanctions. So all in all, we got to see what happens. But if we do take a page out of the 70s book, this could be one of those, again, it's not supposed to happen, low probability, but this could cause a lot of issues. And I'm sure this is what a lot of people are worried about, broadly speaking, if this conflict does get out of hand. And if I think it was Israeli officials today who even said this could take months to years. If this develops into another Ukrainian situation type beat, you are going to start getting the effects on energy once again. And you already saw a year of how we dealt with that in 2022. So either way, it's going to be wild. And Chatadonia, I think I'm going to leave it there. I will wrap it up with plays real quick. Watch UAL. I'm still in that. I grabbed 500 shares. I'm down after the earnings, but I'm going to wait for the guidance tomorrow. VFC, we were talking activist investors yesterday. Made a play. I flipped out for like 2-3%, but this thing went absolutely insane. They got an activist investor. Watch out for them. And then VKTX, they gave an update. This is another one of those GLP Ozempic type drugs. So I made a flip on it after hours. I got out. It wouldn't film me. It was like with 30 shares, but ended up doing good. So watch out for those plays. Otherwise, it's super simple. Netflix, Tesla, and then all of the follow-up earnings. And even by the time you wake up, you might find some plays. But Chatadonia, that is your watch list, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure hydrate, healthy, ready to go. Make sure post your watch list. Make sure we see you there in the morning. I need the armor on. I need the helmet shining. And I need you to remember to be content. Oh, a life filled with contentment, it will take you a long, long way, especially as you plant and grow that garden. My friend, what I am saying, find joy in peace. Enjoy what you're doing in all moments. Submit to the season. There's a lot of ways to put it, but all in all, don't let the appetite get the best of you. Have a good goal and desire, and it will fill. I don't know if they feel me, Chad, but I love you. God bless you. I will see you in the morning. And peace out. I want to get awkward. I feel like but no, we were talking very serious stuff, man. And it is, man. Pray for everybody out there. All right, man? Yeah, amen? Amen. Horn.